Right now here on the John Nabors Show, we have a very special guest that's joining us, and I know he is one of the most favorite of the Razorback fans out there when it comes to all things basketball. You've probably heard of him. His name is Bobby Reagan of Barstool Sports, and he joins us now here on the John Nabors Show. And Bobby, as always, man, appreciate you joining us. How you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. I mean, listen, anytime I know that there's someone that needs to talk about Arkansas basketball, it's me that people come to. So,
Yeah.
you're a buddy. I love talking to you. So when you text, I was like, of course, when you want to do it, I know how much Arkansas fans want to hear from me. I know how much Arkansas fans value my opinion, considering they think I run Barstool Sports and all of our main accounts. So it's flattering. There was a time I was beloved in Arkansas, and I think I feel it a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I was laughing at seeing your responses into some people just getting after you, and then anytime they're like, "Oh, you just can't stop talking about Arkansas," is what it is, Bobby. You cannot stop thinking about Arkansas. It's on your mind. It's keeping you up at night, living rent free in your head, is what they all think.
The best is everyone saying that about something that I didn't have anything to do with. It was like the picture of Calipari with the caption, like, "Hey, good to see John in the second round," and everyone's like, "You rent free." I'm like, I don't. You think they give me access to the main account? You think they just give bloggers and podcasters and normal people access to the main account? No, we have a social media team.
Well, I will
And
say
the rent-free things, I was like, the irony of screaming rent-free when you're yelling at me about something that I had nothing to do with. It really brought a smile to my face.
Well, I was going to say, in their defense, though, it is something that I think like maybe you would say, though. Like, I'm not saying you did, but you probably thought about it, though.
I'll think about it, pending what he does the first year or two at Arkansas. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's true. Like I said it when CBS had the piece about Calipari. I think it was last week, 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and it was how he's adjusting to life at Arkansas. And I blogged out from the Kentucky side because he talked about the ending of Kentucky, about how it was hard and how it sucked. But really, he's the patient zero is John Calipari. Like, he was the reason it sucked, because you're the head coach. You made simple mistakes. You kind of caused this divide among Kentucky fans. So it is like, it's still the biggest story in college basketball until I don't know what'll top it. Like, I don't know if there's a player that comes back. Bronny James, if he decides to transfer to Ohio State or Duquesne, might steal headlines. But in terms of the offseason, there's no bigger story than Calipari leaving Kentucky for Arkansas. So if there's a quote about it, especially from a Kentucky side, that's my job.
Well, I'll say this: we know about where we've been at and on different sides of here. Like, obviously, we're never going to come together on an agreement. It's just going to be this way, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a great rivalry.
We'll come to an agreement when Calipari leaves Arkansas.
Yeah, maybe. And then
that's when we'll come to an agreement.
And then if Mark Pope's won a lot of national titles and Arkansas hires him away, then we can start all over again. So
right.
Just go round and round. But I will say something that I think we can all agree on was the absolute disservice that the SEC did in scheduling, where they officially released not the dates or anything, but just the opponents of every team in the SEC, as well as home or on the road. And of course, Arkansas and Kentucky's playing each other. Arkansas and Kentucky's playing at Rupp, which I will fully agree. That's the main one. That's the main one. But to not have these two teams play twice when you know that even the game in Bud Walton is going to draw in a lot of eyeballs and a lot of people, how did they drop the bag on this so badly, where they had a home run, easy to, you didn't come out of the schedule, just an easy thing to do, and you don't do it? Arkansas, Kentucky only play once in the regular season. Now,
I can understand the argument if you say they're playing once, that's going to get all the eyeballs because there's no rematch. It's the beauty of football, right? Like, Alabama, Auburn meet once. Ohio State, Michigan meet once. Army, Navy meet once. That's the beauty of those rivalries. But this is a conference basketball rivalry, and it's not a new rivalry, right? Like this, we've said it before. This goes back to the 90s, maybe even the 80s. The fact that there's not a home and home is just so dumb, because let's say Kentucky wins. Arkansas fans will scream, well, it was a road game. Of course we lost that. There's no chance for, the home game. And it's the matchup that people want to see the most, probably in all the sport this year. And it doesn't necessarily matter how good these teams are. They could be 6, 7 seeds. If there's a second game going on in late February, guess what people are doing? They're going to watch it. And look, like, I know Kentucky's 3 home and homes are Alabama, great. Tennessee, makes sense. They're the rival. And then Vanderbilt. Like, why are we why is Vanderbilt, Kentucky protected? I know they've played a bunch of times, but I mean, you could fact check me. I'm pretty sure our record's something like 842-7 against Vanderbilt. So it's like, at least give us the entertaining factor. Plus, there's nothing to gain from playing Vanderbilt twice. Maybe at best they sneak into a quad 2 win if on the road. But like, you right, the way Vanderbilt has been, you kind of only hurt yourselves playing Vanderbilt, because if you take a loss, it's a bad loss, and there's nothing to gain with a win.
Yeah,
I think both fan bases would trade another opponent to play Arkansas, Kentucky twice.
Well, I was going to say, because going to your same point, Arkansas, it's the same thing with Missouri. It's like they played them twice, and
at least Missouri should be decent this year.
Like, I mean, they can't be worse than 0-18 last year.
I think they're going to be a tournament team. Let me say that. I think Missouri should be a tournament team this year. So at least you have a quad 1 potential opportunity.
Right. Yeah.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah. No, totally understand. And, before Arkansas's constant, or at least their permanent 3 home and home opponents were LSU, A&M, and Missouri. Now, A&M, they only played once on the road, but they got Texas twice. So Texas twice, I mean, the history, all that makes sense. And
right,
but it's like the Missouri and LSU, especially LSU, it's kind of like, it just doesn't do anything for anybody. And I guess I tried to give maybe more credit than they deserve to the SEC of thinking this through, because I'm like, this isn't just a bias like, oh, Razorback fans. It's like, you guys are driven by money. Like, that's what you're driven by. You're driven by television ratings, because television is what brings in the money.
A conference went away because of television, ratings and eyeballs and money. And
so, like, how do you just not make this a thing? It seems like it's the simplest, easiest, money printing thing.
The easiest. And if it was, let's say Kentucky's 3 would be Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, it would still suck, but I wouldn't make as much of I wouldn't be losing my mind over it, because it's like, okay, well, the history is there with Florida and Tennessee. Alabama's coming off the Final Four. They're, Nate Oates, whatever. Again, it would suck. It would not make all the sense in the world, but at least it's Florida and Tennessee instead of Vanderbilt. Like, that's the frustrating part, is you're trading a second Arkansas game for a second Vanderbilt game, and nobody wants that except for this, except for the city of Nashville.
Yeah, well, and also to your point too, like, I know Arkansas fans who they look at as like, if you got 3 permanent home and home opponents, for instance, Arkansas would say Kentucky for sure, which I know a lot of teams want that, but at least it makes sense. They want Kentucky for sure. Texas, I think they definitely want, just from the history. And after that, they'd even, get an LSU, give a Missouri, whatever. But for Kentucky, I know you mentioned Arkansas, you mentioned Tennessee. What would be the third team that Kentucky fans may look at as like that we would love this team in the conference to be the home and home?
Probably Florida.
Yeah,
I think Florida makes the most sense. I mean, I know Alabama's been better recently, but Florida, I mean, I was there in college during the Billy Donovan years. Like, that was the rivalry in the SEC during the 2000s, and probably up until 2014, 2015-ish. So you still have recent history, right? Like, I know it's almost a decade ago, but most fans remember Scotty Robekin and Patrick Young and that whole era. So if I'm handpicking the 3 opponents, I would probably say, and to me, what they should have done is 2 permanent opponents and then kind of a rotating third of, like, I think it's awesome we play Alabama home. Like, hey, we get a shot there, they get a shot here. For a team that's going to be preseason top 5, like, that's great for the conference. But, like, what if 2 years from now Alabama is projected to be a bubble team, and it's like, well, How about that year? Like, it should almost be like NFL flex scheduling, where it's
Yeah.
like, you give us Tennessee and Florida home and home every year, and then rotate. Like, have a pool of 6 other programs that you rotate as the third home and home. Like, okay, if you want to keep Kentucky Vanderbilt as one, fine, but we only see them twice every 5 years. I think that would be a better argument than what we get. And it's just so dumb because this is the first year. Like, this is the year you have all the attention. This is the year you have, and I don't think it'll ever get higher. I think even if Calipari wins a national title this year, I don't think the draw will be as high as it is year one.
Yeah, I'm with you because I look at as with the teams coming in, the Calipari angle, and you're starting to see, of course, Bama goes to their first Final Four. Another team, again, we could talk about the conference all day, but I think Ole Miss is going to be really improved. I think they're going to be a good team with Chris Beard. So, Chris Jans, I feel like that guy is going to be a constant, like 20, 21 win. 19, 20 wins, but he's always going to be competitive. So yeah, the conference,
they're going to get wins they shouldn't.
Yeah, like him. And then you got, Bruce Pearl at Auburn. So like the list goes on and on. But I guess another thing too, and I had this discussion. I want your thoughts, Bobby, on conference scheduling. We agree. Like it should be twice for Arkansas, Kentucky, but I was thinking that maybe they go to a 20-game conference schedule, which is not out of the normal. Like we see the Big Ten do it, and we've seen other conferences go into that too. But this was the time also I felt like, and I feel like coaches would be on board with it, to add 2 extra conference games to get even more of these matchups, keep a lot of the money in. But when it comes to that angle of scheduling, do you think it'd be best to have that many conference games in a 16 conference team conference, or is that something that they just need to figure out and stick with the 18?
So I'm torn on this because, like, I love mid-major basketball. I love when these mid-majors get a shot to go into, the blue bloods, the big names, and get a shot to win, and that can carry them to a potential tournament bid. And if you move to a 20-game schedule, it would be awful in the sense of you're either cutting 2 of those games or you're cutting 2 marquee non-conference games. I don't want to lose the marquee games. That's just the fan of me. I want to see the best teams play each other as much as possible. But at the same time, I know the low majors of the world rely on some of these, buy games is what they're called, where they get paid X amount of money to come into Rupp Arena or Bud Walton or wherever else, typically for a loss, but they get, that's how they fund their athletic department. So the purist in me would hate to lose that because it's how the game works. It's how the system works. But the fan in me wants to see the best teams play each other. So I'm fine with the 20-game schedule, but I don't know how I'd want to cut the non-conference. Like, to me, I guess I probably want to cut the true bottom games. Like, does nothing for me when Kentucky plays LIU Brooklyn, let's say, or something like that. St. Francis, pick one of those teams. But it does something for me when I see Kentucky Kansas in the non-conference, or Kentucky Ohio State in the non-conference, or whatever it might be. I just don't want to lose that. I don't want mid-majors, good mid-majors, to lose the chance of the one game that they can get on the schedule, because we know that's a whole nother argument. And I don't want to lose the marquee games. But it's a weird time because these conferences are just too big. The regular season seems dumb because the regular season champion, you never have the same schedule. So that argument is always there for a tiebreaker or whatever else. But yeah, like, give me the best teams playing. That's the only thing. That's what I care the most about. I want to see the best teams playing.
Speaking with Bobby Reagan of Barstool Sports here on the John Nabors Show. Now, Bobby, another thing too, which is going into scheduling and all of that, but we've talked about the net ranking, and it makes me wonder, with the ever-changing amount of conferences and the conference realignment and the teams joining, and some conferences in football got better, but some conferences in basketball got better, whatever it is. But do you think that maybe that's something that they're also going to look at too, with the expansion of the conferences, with the possible expansion of conference games and conference scheduling? Is it something that they maybe are going to stick with and adjust, or do they kind of blow it up and do something different, similar to what they did with the RPI and everything there too?
I think it adjusts itself because it's all about what you do on the court. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a non-conference game or a conference game. It's road away neutral. How, what was the score? How much did you win by? How much did you lose by? So I think it adjusts itself. I'm not too worried about the net. Listen, you can put any system out there. People are going to hate it, right? Like, they could just use the KenPom system, which everyone in the world views as the best rankings. And I'm a big KenPom fan. People argue, KenPom data is skewed and all this other stuff. KenPom darlings is something that's tossed out there all the time. So it doesn't matter what ranking system they use. People are going to hate it. And again, the net system is a sorting tool. It's not the end all be all. So to me, like, in my list of complaints, the net system is probably 150th in what's wrong in college basketball right now.
Yeah, well, don't tell that to Eric Musselman, because he was always somebody who was very.
And I get it, because it's an easy thing Buzz did the same thing. Coaches can. That's a perfect tool for coaches to look at and say, what's wrong, all this other stuff. But at the same time, it's like, well, what's the solution? There's 363 teams or something like that in Division I. How else there's not a perfect ranking system. You want everyone's like, well, why don't we get former coaches and it's like, so you want a human element involved now? We can yell at that, because guess who Jim Boeheim's probably going to vote for and not vote for? You want a computer system, but then you yell at that. We don't know the ranking, the formula. We can show everyone the algorithm. No one's going to understand it because it's an algorithm. Like, there's no correct answer. It's just one of those, I wish people talked about the net ranking system more correct than kind of how it's viewed.
Well, I do want to ask you another question, going back to the Calipari angle. We had a lot of people on my show yesterday, just Razorback fans, I wouldn't say arguing, but they were interested, and I want your thoughts. When Calipari goes to Rupp, which actually, let's start with this before we go to that. When will this game be played? Because like we talked about this, if this thing's in early January and the football season's still going on, I'm going to go to Birmingham myself and
it's the worst.
Like, burn something. So when would be the best time in your mind for this particular game to be played between Arkansas and Kentucky?
Saturday after the Super Bowl.
That's what I was kind of leaning that way too. Yeah, football's done.
Something like that. Yeah, football's done. Maybe 2 weeks after the, somewhere in that range. Yeah. But then you get the fear of, what if one of these teams isn't living up to the hype, or there's injuries or this other stuff. But, before then it's getting buried. Like, we love college basketball. America loves football. That's just kind of how it's viewed. Yeah. So in order to get eyeballs on it, you could say maybe like the day of the Army-Navy game, where it's the Army-Navy game and the Heisman. But you still have the NFL to deal with. Like, everything gets lost that night, because the very next morning it's the injury report and all this other stuff with the NFL. So to me, I'd play it the week after the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Back when all the attention kind of turns towards basketball, once football.
That was the very last game of the season. Put it the very last Saturday.
Yeah, because I think it was 2 years ago that Arkansas-Kentucky was the final game of the season in Bud Walton. That's when Kentucky won after Arkansas won.
Everybody hurt.
So, yeah, that was a weird time. But, yeah. So, yeah, do something like that. I'd agree with you. And since this game's at Rupp, which we know, what do you think the reception is going to be for Calipari? Honestly, is it from the fans? I know what yours is going to be, but like from the fans' perspective, what do you think it's going to be? Is it going to be cheering, standing up ovation, boos raining down? Like, what do you think it's going to be?
It'll be mostly boos. And then it's hard to tell because we don't know how the game's going to play out, right? If Kentucky wins, I could see maybe like a little round of applause afterwards. Like, hey, thanks for the title. Thanks for the run. We got you. So, no hard feelings on our end. If it's a close game and Arkansas wins, it could be boos the whole time. But I would be shocked if he gets like a standing ovation walking into Rupp Arena the first time. And quite frankly, like, from a fan standpoint, he shouldn't, because he is, like I keep saying it, he is the current enemy. He is in your conference. He is trying to beat you. Down the road, sure. But right now, like, you know, the Band-Aid is still on. It's not ripped off. We haven't seen him coach in Rupp Arena for an opposing team since I think he was at UMass. So it's been a long, long time. I suppose there'll probably be some applauses when he walks in, but I would say it's probably at least 90% boos.
Well, before I let you get out of here, Bobby, last question for you. And you mentioned stuff that you have problems with, or the list of things that you have on college basketball and where it ranks. So what is the biggest issue that you have with college basketball heading into this offseason? And is it something that can actually be fixed, or is it just something that we just got to live with?
Man, the biggest problem?
Yeah. Or at least your top three, in your power rankings, something like that.
I'm pro transfer portal, but I do think they need to put in kind of a stipulation, like everybody gets one free transfer, and then the second transfer is free if your coach leaves. Like, I think that would kind of appeal to the masses more. I don't care. Like, I really don't care that a guy can leave whenever. I'm not someone who's like, well, I grew up when they had to spend 4 years here. And it's like, oh, okay. But guess what? It's 2024. Things are different. But I think that would just shut up a lot of arguments and a lot of people. So I'd be fine with that, just for my own sake of having to see and hear every single day on, TV, podcast, news, whatever, that the transfer portal's out of control. I would fix that. The scheduling is always dumb. I just don't like the way they schedule. I think too much of the season gets lost in football. And I guess tied to that is I hate conference realignment. I hate the fact that it's not what it was, where everyone played a double round robin and you saw a team at home and away and there was a true regular season champion, because then the regular season mattered. It truly does feel like the regular season doesn't matter outside of what seed are you playing for. Like, and that's not fair to every league. Like, the Big East regular season champion matters because they have a true round robin. There's no arguments. Hey, we played you at home, we played you away, we beat you both times. But everyone else, like, do we really care who wins the SEC regular season? I don't get up in arms about that. I love to win the SEC conference tournament, but I don't care about the SEC regular season as much. It's just something that happens, and I'm like, a win is great because it's like, okay, now we're in play for a 2 seed or a 3 seed. A loss, all right, and we're down to a 5 seed. It's not, oh no, we're 2 games out of first and we don't play the top 2 teams again because we played them once in January. So I hate that. I really do. And it just it plays to the masses that the regular season in college basketball doesn't matter. But it's true. Now, if we expand the NCAA tournament, that catapults to number 1. And I hate that there are talks of the 8-team MTEs going away. The Maui Invitational potentially, Norlander talked about it, potentially turning into a 2 4-team MTE. Like, the Maui Invitational is the best thing college basketball has that's not called the NCAA tournament. And the fact that, like, this Vegas thing is happening, which I like, why can't we, why, and again, everything's money driven, but like, why can't we embrace history at some points? Like, the Maui Invitational matters. Like, that is an awesome tournament. Just keep it as it is, please.
Yeah, I'm with you on that part of it too. And I can tell you that it's a concern, but it's also something that hopefully, until it happens, or doesn't happen, I guess, we can at least just enjoy this. But still, it's great to talk with you as always, Bobby. I'm so glad again that we get to hate each other again. You're a terrible human being, and I can't wait to really just leading up into that, hopefully on a Saturday after the Super Bowl matchup in Rupp. I can't wait to go down there over to Lexington, where I'm sure we'll be respected and appreciated. It's going to be great. So we look forward to that, and we always appreciate
Kentucky fans will welcome you with open arms. But then the moment the ball tips, it's just going to be booing.
Yeah, well, I can't wait for that. It's going to be great. But either way, Bobby, as always, man, we appreciate it. Have a great rest of your summer, man. And I'm sure we'll be catching up with you very, very soon, all right?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Have a good one.